Everyone is talking about the Straits of Hormuz and the threat of Iran closing it. But if the Strait of Hormuz is closed, that is not only a problem for Iran, the Gulf states, or for ships at sea. It's a major blow to the global economy. Now, roughly 1/5 of the world's daily oil supply passes through this narrow passage. A single credible threat is enough. A few mines are enough. A handful of attack boats are enough to throw the entire global energy market into absolute turmoil. This war is unusual. It didn't begin when Iran tried to activate that threat. It began when the United States and Israel made sure it could never succeed. Even before a single mine layer boat entered the water, even before a single radar could produce a stable operational picture, the Iranian system had already begun to collapse. And that is the story we're going to break down tonight. How Iran's eyes, its coordination, and its naval capability were broken before the open battle ever began. This war didn't begin with a first explosion. It began with the collapse of the system that was supposed to control the first explosion. Now, on the evening of February 28th, even before a single naval mine entered the water, even before a single attack boat entered the shipping lane, the United States and Israel had already targeted Iran's radars, its communication networks, and its ability to see, understand, and respond to events. It happened in the air, it happened at sea, and it happened very quickly. Now the question is what exactly broke that night, and why that determined the rest of the campaign even before its opening notes. I'm Mati Shoshani, bringing you the full picture of what's happening in our neighborhood, the Middle East. And as you know, this isn't the easiest neighborhood in the world to live in. Now, to understand this story, we first need to understand the arena. The Strait of Hormuz lies between Iran, Oman, and the United Arab Emirates. It is a narrow maritime passage, but a critical one. Roughly 20% of the world's daily oil supply passes through it. Now, from Iran's point of view, this is one of the strongest pressure levers it has. If it succeeds in making the strait dangerous for shipping, it's not only threatening ships, it's threatening the global energy market. Now that's why Iran's plan was simple: survive the opening blows, and then move to the maritime phase. Send in the boats, lay the mines, and make it clear that every passage through the strait has become a risk. But this is exactly where the United States and Israel acted first, before Iran even understood what was happening while it was still deep in negotiations. The first phase was in the air. Even before the strike pilots approached their targets, EA-18G Growlers moved in. This is the primary electronic warfare aircraft of the US Navy. Its job is not to drop bombs. Its job is to open an electronic corridor through enemy defenses, to cause the enemy's defense systems to stop functioning like a network. In the backseat of a Growler sits an electronic warfare officer, an ECMO, who operates the jamming systems in real time. It focuses energy on that frequency, disrupts its data processing, and distorts the picture the radar sees. Now, roughly 30 minutes before the strikes, aircraft reached their targets. The Growlers took up positions 50 to 100 miles away. From there, the broad jamming phase began. The goal at the stage was not to hide one aircraft. The goal was to erase Iran's situational picture. Early warning screens filled with electronic noise. Radar operators could no longer distinguish what was real and what was not real. Then, about 15 minutes before the strike, the Americans moved to a more precise phase. Now it was no longer about general electronic fog, but actual deception. False targets, changes to speed and distance data, the creation of fake signatures. In simple terms, the Iranian radar screens kept working, but they stopped reflecting reality. Now, at the same time, hundreds of ADM-160 MALD decoys were launched. These are air-launched decoys designed to appear on radar like real fighter aircraft. To the Iranian operator, it looked like a much larger strike wave than what was actually in the air. Suddenly, radar screens filled with what appears to be large formations of F-15s and F-16s flying towards Tehran. Now that is the trap, because the moment the radar operator tries to respond, He has to expose himself. And here, the dilemma was born that decided the opening of the battle. If Iranian radars remain off, Iran is blind. If they turn on and attempt to burn through the jamming, they immediately mark themselves as targets. Because the moment a radar transmits, HAR missiles can ride that radiation directly back to the source. That is the point when an air defense system stops being an asset and becomes a risk to itself. Now, at the same time, the electronic warfare aircraft didn't attack only the radars. They also jammed the communication networks, connecting the batteries to command. And this may be the most important point in the entire story. Air defense is not built only from a launcher and a radar. It's built from the connection between them and other devices. The moment that link breaks, every battery is left alone. Even if it sees a target, it doesn't know whether it has authorization to fire. Even if it identifies an intrusion, it can't know whether it has seen the full picture. And so in a very short time, Iran's air defense network stopped functioning as a network. That was the moment when the stealth aircraft went in. American and Israeli F-35s, stealth fighters, and possibly even US F-22s entered the battle space. Not because every Iranian battery had been destroyed, but because the space had been open for a limited time. And that is all a strike force needs: a window, a few minutes in which the other side sees less, understands less, and reacts more slowly. That's what happened on the evening of February 28th. Iran didn't lose only radars, it lost its ability to manage the opening of the battle on its own terms. There's a short point here that is important to pause on. You can now invest in Israel, home to one of the world's most innovative economies, with the same ease as investing in American markets. Over the last 12 months, Israel's Tel Aviv 35 stock index surged 95% in US dollar terms, compared to the S&P 500's 15% gain. And the outperformance is consistent over 2, 5, and 10-year periods. And since mid-2000s, the shekel has appreciated 60% against the US dollar. Now, these figures represent unmanaged market indices, not actual client returns, and past performance is, of course, no guarantee of future success. Now, this is why I'm excited to introduce you to my trusted friends and paid sponsors, Wise Money Israel. And while I'm not a client yet, I've known their CEO and his family personally for years, and I have complete confidence in their integrity. Licensed in Israel and SEC registered in the United States, Wise Money Israel manages approximately $120 million for clients from more than 30 nations, offering expert access to Israeli stocks and bonds for those seeking growth, diversification, or to fulfill their biblical calling. So guys, visit wisemoneyisrael.com/TBN for a free consultation today. And now we return to the picture on the ground. We now reach the second stage, the sea. The Strait of Hormuz is a maritime bottleneck. Iran, therefore, didn't build its naval force there around heavy warships, but around large numbers of small combat boats. What is known as a mosquito fleet, a very large number of fast boats, small, relatively cheap, and difficult to detect or intercept. Now, among the vessels are Ashura boats, Tarek boats, and modified Bog Hamar type boats. Some are armed with heavy machine guns, rockets, and anti-ship missiles. Some appear to be civilian vessels, but in practice are intended for military missions. Now, here it's important to pause and explain something. It's not that Iran didn't possess a larger conventional navy with warships built with Russian and Chinese assistance. But in the first 10 days of the conflict, US naval forces sank much of that Iran's conventional fleet. US submarines targeted Iranian warships relentlessly, and even the much publicized Iranian drone destroyer, once claimed by Ali Khamenei to threaten American aircraft carriers, ended the battle in flames. But in the Straits of Hormuz itself, Iran had prepared a different kind of fleet. The Iranian concept for war in the Strait was simple. They were not trying to defeat an American destroyer in a duel. Instead, the goal was to send dozens of small targets at once, to overload defensive systems, to confuse them, to get close, and then launch the next move, laying naval mines to the shipping lanes to prevent tankers and merchant vessels from passing. It is important to understand why this threat matters so much. Iran possesses two primary types of naval mines. The first are relatively simple contact mines, They float just below the surface and explode when a ship strikes them. The second are more advanced bottom mines. These are placed on the seabed in shallow waters and wait. They don't need to see a ship. Instead, they detect the vessel's acoustic signal, the mechanical noise it produces, and then they detonate. Now, according to available estimates, Iran possesses a stockpile of between 2,000 and 6,000 naval mines. In a passage as narrow as Hormuz, even a small fraction of that number can have a global economic impact. The laying method itself is extremely simple. The mine is secured to the rear of a small boat. When the crew reaches the designated point, they simply roll or push the mine into the water. Sometimes a single metal rail is used to slide it out. There's no specifically sophisticated technology here, but that is exactly what makes the method so dangerous. A small boat can enter a shipping lane at night, drop 2 or 3 mines into the water within seconds, and escape back to shore before a larger naval force can even respond. That's why the American response was not to wait for the mines to enter the water. If that happens, you're already forced into a dangerous mine-clearing operation under threat of fire. Instead, the United States acted according to a different principle. Preemptive denial. Deny the capability before it can even be activated. Now, that means striking the vessels intended to lay mines while they're still tied to the pier, and striking the warehouses where the mines themselves are stored. 16 vessels capable of laying such mines were identified and attacked. Their identification relied on signal intelligence, maritime surveillance, and human intelligence. Now, in other words, the United States and Israel didn't wait to see which boats went to sea. They built the picture well in advance. They knew which vessels were intended for the mission, where they were located, and when they were most vulnerable. Now, at that moment, the dual target doctrine came into effect. Both the boats themselves and the storage sites of the mines were struck at the same time. If boats remained, there were no mines. If mines remained, there were no boats. That's how you break an entire operational capability in a single blow. Now, in terms of the weaponry, the United States didn't rely on a single method. Against small boats, AGM-114 Hellfire missiles were used, including launches from the MQ-9 Reaper drones. The Hellfire missile is particularly suited for targets of this kind. It's relatively small, it's highly accurate, and capable of tracking fast-moving targets. Now, when a Reaper drone tracks a boat in real time, measuring its speed, direction, and maneuvering, it feeds that data to the strike system. The missile can then predict the boat's future position and correct its course accordingly. The missile itself travels at speeds exceeding Mach 1, roughly 1,200 kilometers per hour, far faster than any attack boat. That means that from the moment the target is chosen, the survival window for that vessel is extremely short. At that same time, long-range cruise missiles were launched from American destroyers. And finally, GPS-guided munitions weighing 2,000 pounds were dropped on storage compounds and workshops where boats and mines were kept. This was no longer a strike against a single boat. It was a systematic dismantling of the entire activation chain. That brings us back to the central question of this entire explanation. Why does this even matter? Now, the answer is simple. Iran lost the 2 conditions it needed to turn Hormuz into a weapon. The first condition was open eyes in the skies, the ability to see and survive the opening phase of the conflict. The second condition was freedom of action at sea, the ability to send out boats and lay the mines. The moment those 2 conditions were broken, almost simultaneously, the entire plan stalled. And that's the difference between delivering a hard strike and breaking a war plan before it can even begin. There's another point that's important to understand. A state doesn't need to lose every tool it possesses in order to lose its ability to act. It only needs to lose the connections between those tools. If the radar can't communicate with the missile battery, if the battery can't communicate with the command, if the mine-laying boats are destroyed at the pier, and if the warehouses supplying them are struck the same night, then even the very large threat is reduced to disconnected pieces. That's exactly the form of warfare we're seeing right here. Not chasing every threat individually, but preventing the threat from ever becoming a functioning system. This is also the moment when psychological damage truly begins. A radar operator who understands that his screen is lying to him loses trust in the system. A battery commander who discovers he has no stable communication with command loses confidence in his decisions. A naval commander who realizes his boats were destroyed before they even dropped a single mine into the water understands that the enemy has penetrated deeply into the preparation stage. This is no longer only an operational blow. It's a blow to the confidence of the entire system. Now, in simple terms, Iran was not defeated here only by firepower. It was defeated in the order of action. The United States and Israel set the pace. They forced Iran to fight out of blindness and confusion and lose initiative. And the moment that happens, even a large number of boats, even thousands of mines, and even impressive air defense systems on paper no longer produce the effect that the regime counted on. From here comes a broader forecast. A regime doesn't collapse because of one incident. It doesn't fall because of one boat, and not because of one radar battery, but it does begin to crack when it repeatedly discovers that its enemy can dismantle its plans before they even reach the activation stage. If that pattern continues, the problem is no longer only military, it becomes political. Because a regime like this relies heavily on an image of control, on the feeling that it holds the initiative, that it can choose the timing of escalation, and that it can decide the moment of response. If again and again it becomes clear that every phase it builds is already mapped, disrupted, and attacked in advance, then the crack moves from the operational system to the center of decision-making itself. And that's the conclusion you, the viewer, should leave from this explanation with. The story is not only which radar was hit, which boat was destroyed. The story is that the United States broke Iran at its most critical point, the ability to connect detection, command, movement, and activation. And the moment that connection is broken, the plan to close the Strait of Hormuz is left without an engine. Right now, the Iranian regime is beginning to understand that it's not dealing with only another military loss, but with a far more dangerous question from its point of view. What happens to a regime that realizes in the middle of a war that every one of its attack plans is exposed and dismantled before it even manages to begin executing them? So guys, keep praying for Israel, pray for the people of Israel, and pray for our soldiers. Every one last one of them. And I want to say this too, pray also for the people of Iran and for US soldiers stationed throughout this region. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe. Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.